Same here.
Okay. All right, board members, you should be unmuted. And if you could turn on video.
Okay.
Six oh two, are you ready to go, Jeff?
Yes.
All the board members are here. Okay. Welcome and good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Bank's Board of Directors School Board meeting. That's a regular session via Zoom on April 12th, 2021. I'd like to call the meeting to order. We'll move on to, I guess, on audience comments. Jeff, are you having people call you, or they can put it in chat if they have a comment?
Yeah, the chat is on just to me and Jacob if they want to do that, or they can.
So contact Jeff or go ahead and put it in the chat if you have any audience members have any comments. So first order of business is to approve the agenda. Take a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve. I'll second it.
Like Raymond moved and Ron second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, motion passed. Looks like there's no presentation or reports and comments are going through chat. So the consent agenda. Take a motion on the consent agenda.
I make a motion, we pass the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, Dan seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Motion passes. Okay, discussion items, the crosswalk discussion. Jeff.
Okay, so we have Ken Schonkweiler, hope I said that right, Ken, here this evening from ODOT to discuss a project that they are working on to move our crosswalk from the middle, well, where it is right now. And so I invited Ken tonight. We've talked, we've sat through a couple of different meetings, and I just wanted him to just talk about that with the board this evening, and eventually potentially bringing an intergovernmental agreement to us in regards to that. So Ken, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. And thanks to everyone else for having me this evening. I am a project manager and planner at ODOT, and as Jeff mentioned, we had funding to essentially redo the crossing that accesses the middle school parking lot, the very problematic one that's in between the two access points of the lot, and to essentially move it to a safer location. I don't think I need to go in depth as to maybe why we're doing that, but Jeff and I have been, in the city of Banks, have been corresponding back and forth on the location. And so if I can share my screen, I think I was just going to kind of give like a very rough outline. I don't exactly have a sketch or anything. I think my screen sharing is disabled, but that's okay. So I can describe it. So basically we would be moving that pedestrian crossing farther north from its existing location to in front of the Banks High School. And to give a more approximate location, just slightly above where the entrance sign is to the high school, that smaller brick statue that's right in front of there. We're planning on putting bulb outs in the existing parking spaces. So that closes the crossing distance for students who need to cross the highway.
Ken,
yes.
I think you should be able to share now.
Oh, okay. like I said, I don't have much. I just was showing a more specific location. So here we are at the Banks High School. And we had planned on moving the crossing to what we would deem as a much safer location that still provides access to a lot of the homes on the north side of Banks, where essentially students would be crossing from. So this crossing would essentially go from just right above where the existing sign is at the high school, and then have what we call our bulb outs. So those are concrete island or concrete ramps that come into the parking space, and then a rectangular rapid flashing beacon. That's essentially a push button activated flashing beacon that students can use to warn drivers that people are using the crosswalk. And then updated crossing striping, as well as street lighting are a part of our plan right now. And so we have funding for all of that. Before I get into the next part, are there questions or comments or concerns from the group?
Would there still be a crosswalk at the current location?
So we would be removing that one. Frankly, it's because it's in between those two access points. The reason why we've had accidents in the past is people are usually pulling in and out of that when they're trying to find a break in traffic. And so, yeah, the plan would be to remove that one and put the northern crossing up here.
Jeff, have you talked about the fact that people park in the parking lot and then go over to the park for school sports?
No, I had not
'Cause
mentioned
it
that.
goes
Right?
on all the time. They park there in the parking lot, whether it's the summer sports or the actual school sports, soccer and everything else is played. There's always something going on there.
Yeah, I
remember-
mean, I've seen it in the evening where they'll cross even down and not even use the crosswalk, but
But people stop for them.
right, but the idea is to remove that. There is a sidewalk from that crosswalk area down to the fields, but I mean, I do see.
My concern would be people would still run across there. And if you took out the crosswalk signs, nobody would be looking to stop for them.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, Jeff, just it's a Sunset Park in that first field that you're looking at that gets utilized all the time by T-ball and Little League and so forth, and all the parents park in the school parking lot and then walk across.
So I guess a question that I have for the group, so this is what I understand, this is kind of a private park, correct? And then these ball fields are the ones that are the school owned. Do I understand that right?
Yeah, so Ken, we use, yes, it is a private park, but youth baseball uses them. The high school uses it for soccer, JV baseball, things like that. So there's a lot of activity at that park throughout the day and evening.
Sure. No, I understand that. I guess the point that I was trying to make was that, the drive for relocating to a crossing, the existing crossing to a safer location is primarily for school travel, and recognizing the fact that people would maybe still cross or would likely still cross to use that park. I remember one thing we had discussed, Jeff, is that this park does have parking, if I understand it right. And is the issue that the parking is insufficient, or?
The parking is down on the bottom side here on your screen there.
That's right where Google's at. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sure. Okay.
so it's more convenient to park in this. I mean, there would probably be ample parking, but
I think you're definitely asking for safety problems, if not at least violations, without having something.
And you have two, one partway down toward the south so that it's away from the entrance, so you actually have two crosswalks?
Sorry, could you say that again?
Well, you want to add one to the north and get rid of the one in the driveway. Could you have one further south also? So that people could still walk from, they would go from the parking lot down by the end of the grade school or something, I mean, end of the middle school, and then walk across in a crosswalk. My concern is people are going to cross it without a crosswalk.
Yeah, and from what I understand from anecdotally is that people use it now without a crosswalk. They don't necessarily cross there. But I do hear you, and I think the biggest thing to point out is that it really violates our crosswalk spacing guidelines to still have that there. Not to mention that by leaving this, that doesn't mitigate this existing
Well,
safety problem for the teachers.
You didn't answer my question. Could you add the one you're talking about and also put one to the south by the end of the middle school down there, so it comes across where the facilities are at the park, right where your arrow is?
Right where okay. So I'd have to check. I'd have to run that through our traffic review folks, but I don't know right now. I think I'd have to look into it a bit more, but
And I don't know how the other board feels about it, but that would give a solution so you'd still have access without having it in the middle of the two driveways.
Well, I think there has to be one somewhere between where it is now and where you're pointing out.
Yes.
I understand. I actually think, so where is the entrance to this park? It's right here.
Yes.
No, it's further south.
Well, that's
Further
the
south.
entrance. That's
There's,
the-
there's two.
There are two entrances, a little one right at the crosswalk and a large one to the south,
Sure,
right there where it says 47 on the highway.
sure. I do see that. Yeah, I would just have to check. It wouldn't be a part of the current project because what we have funding for right now is essentially one location. I think if I was to measure the distance from, so this is essentially where they're parking, correct?
Yes, yes.
And then moving it down here, it looks to be about the same distance as up
Except you're
here.
coming into the middle of the park, not going away from the park.
I mean, I would have to check.
I guess,
Sorry, go ahead.
I think you hear the concerns, and I've been in meetings like this, and we can kind of go down the rabbit hole and not to problem solve. But from my standpoint, I see what you're trying to do, and I think it's very beneficial. That has been a problem area for us in a lot of ways. And Jeff, I would recommend that you send to Jeff what we were talking about a while back as far as where the bus service was at, trying to get buses out of a main entrance as well. Just trying to spread out all the circulation going into the school district. I guess the one question that I have is when you talk about expanding the sidewalk out into the street parking, would you do that on both sides?
That's correct. Yeah, you would have bulb outs on both sides.
Okay, and then would you also change the caution sign and bring that down to that location as well?
That's correct. Yeah, so it wouldn't be an overhanging structure. If you've seen maybe in the city of Portland or in other cities, you have the flashing beacons on each side. They're a lot brighter and more visible from a vehicular standpoint.
And that would be out on that extension that's out in the street parking?
Correct.
The one thing that we do have is that on the street side, we do have a lot of student parking there. And I don't know how big of that area is or what that does for spacing of cars, but that would be something to you take what was a typical Friday night football game, and we would have cars on either side going down Main Street. Anyway,
I'm not
there-
sure I
there's-
understood the.
I
last
like-
point.
Well, so I guess we're just taking up a parking space on either side. And obviously
Correct,
one parking
yes.
space, not that big a deal, but I personally like the idea. It just helps trying to remove the pedestrian of kids crossing that area. It's really problematic.
The other thing to think about is in the morning, at least that's when I've been aware of it, the southbound traffic often drops off next to the current crosswalk. They actually use that as a drop-off point for some students, at least. I don't know if they still do it, but that had been used in the past. So would you have the same effect just moving it up further? I don't know.
I'm not exactly sure what the drop-off plan would be. I think that is something that ultimately Jeff would have a lot of feedback on too. It's technically not legal to drop off in a crosswalk or to park in one.
Yeah.
But so I think that's kind of our, really where we were coming at this when we were working with the city and Jeff on it, is that the goal is to provide a safe place for students to cross that doesn't rely on flaggers and teachers and volunteers in the morning to essentially, move traffic. We don't have the situation that happens in Banks where we have permitted flaggers to the school district. We don't have that anywhere else in our ODOT region. And so we kind of recognize it as being a very hazardous issue for school travel.
So
So that's where we're coming from.
what's the distance you need between a driveway and a walkway? Is there by law a recommended distance? I mean, I guess what I'm asking is, could you see the circle right in the middle of the road, right below that red car?
Sure.
Could you put it there? Because the problem with the north side is nobody's going to go up north and then come back down south to,
To the park.
to the park. So if you had it a little bit further south, but not, I mean, where it is, where that circle is, you would have access to those ball fields and where you actually go into the ball fields.
I guess I didn't realize that the ball fields were such a priority for the school district, but I could do more research on that. There are several things to take into account, right? So it's an access, and then it's essentially spacing from the previous crosswalk, because as we have crosswalks that are spaced closer together, cars typically don't adhere to them as well, even if you have lights and whatnot. You take a look here.
Well, if there is a crosswalk down at Wilkes Street, which there isn't now, clear down the street that borders the
Sure.
north end of the campus, that could serve that community coming in from the south. And then the one that Dan just pointed out, where the circle is on the street, could serve the ball fields. It almost looks like the one you're proposing kind of splits the different and doesn't satisfy either one.
Okay.
I think you kind of have to look at the ball fields across the street. You just kind of, even though they aren't, consider them part of the school grounds from a utilization standpoint, because they are used a lot.
Yeah, I mean, that is definitely not the information that we were kind of operating under.
So I will just say, I was going from the mindset of school hours, school time, and the ball fields are more used in the evening, where traffic obviously isn't as busy as it is, at morning time and release time. I do agree the crosswalk there, somewhere around the circle there, but we were approaching it as during school hours type approach, and you just don't have that heavy of traffic, after 4 o'clock. There's just not, because I've parked in that parking lot and walked across to the ball fields, and I don't think many even go back to the crosswalk, to be honest with you. But I do get the safety concern, and I know the community uses those fields a lot, especially during the spring. Like I said, we approached it from a start time, release time point of view from the school district. So I do apologize to Ken as far as not sharing that information as well, but that's why having him here this evening and trying to move forward with this project. And Ken did say it. I mean, we are the only district with certified flaggers, out on a major highway directing traffic,
Well, there's no question that the current location is not good.
Yep.
Correct.
Nobody would argue that for sure.
Yeah, and another point that I'd like to make is that just because, at every intersection is a legal crossing, whether there's striping or not. And so it's not like one could not cross at that location anymore. It just would not have the lights and essentially the crossing features. I mean, you can still legally cross, and to Jeff's point, with the traffic being lower, similar to Wilkes or other locations where we have, intersections without crosswalks, like they're still legal crossings.
Know that.
All right. Well,
But when they're illegal crossing, it just means that somebody has to stand out there and wait for a car to stop. Because if there's lights flashing, but otherwise a person stands close to the edge and waits for somebody to stop.
all right. So let's do this. Ken, I appreciate the information, and you and I can communicate, and then I can communicate to the board as you check on some of their questions that they had of what might be possible to put an additional crosswalk in towards whatever the circle is, or I can help you with the map, and we can just go from there and just have some more conversations.
Sure, that sounds good. I mean, the biggest limitation that I would pose to the group is just simply funding right now. We have the funding for the one crossing, but not necessarily the other. So I just would like to make that point before there are further decisions made on it.
When you're talking about the money, the one that you have with the lights is the expensive one, but like Dan talked about that circle, if it was just a painted crosswalk, that provides some access. It doesn't have to be a light in both places, but Dan was right, Will was right at Wilk Street, but even a painted one like the current one gets people's attention.
I would have
That's
to
a lot less
check.
expensive than lights.
I would have to check and see. So there are other considerations than simply striping it. For example, we need to design an ADA compliant ramp and have some kind of exit facility for the pedestrian. And then essentially look at the crossing distance.
I guess if I had to choose between the one you're proposing and the one there at the circle, I'd probably have to choose the one at the circle.
Agreed.
I think you do have an ADA ramp. I think that's part of the sidewalk that comes around the building, if I'm not mistaken. So like the sidewalk just to the right of the circle there, I believe that is
We
raised.
would have to redesign that because it's definitely not up to ADA standard.
Sure.
The only caution I would say, or the point I would make with the circle, is most of the foot traffic is coming from the north. And they're not, I mean, they may not make it down there. I mean, we're talking about the evenings and baseball and that for that one. But as far as foot traffic coming in the morning, the majority comes from the north side. And you know, we can educate our kids on where to go in that, but that I just worry that, you know, it's another 100, 200
Okay.
feet. I'm just going to cross right here.
That's why I was suggesting at least a painted stripe down at Wilkes, especially if it's already a legal crossing.
Yeah. Okay.
That is a good point that you make, Jeff, is that, you know, usually what we find when we do these safe routes to school planning grants is that kids take the shortest distance, and it's not always the safest one. So it's definitely something to keep in mind.
And just to add to that, as far as what I see from the north side is that parents try to avoid the parking lot, and so they pull off on the that would be a southbound lane to the side, let the kids off, and then drive further down Highway 47. And that this sidewalk would pick up that situation. I just yeah, anyway.
Okay, well, I do appreciate all of your feedback. We had basically kind of gone out and done some early surveys, so I guess we'll need to kind of back off, and I'll follow up with you, Jeff, once we have some kind of consensus. So
Okay. Well, like I said, just check on the board's questions and find some more things out, and then I can communicate with them, and, you know, we can move forward.
okay, well, thank you everybody for your time.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you,
Thanks, Ken.
Ken.
Thanks, Ken.
Thank you.
Thanks. COVID update.
All right. Didn't put together a presentation. I just wrote down some notes here. So, so first of all, as you know, we've been going about a month now at least, and this is our third week. Thank you, Mr. Pence. This is our third week of what we call full days, about 9 o'clock to 2:15 in our hybrid. Once the announcement was made over spring break, the 6 feet to 3 feet thing, we went to work on it. I will say just at the beginning of this that I just informed the admin, the principals and support admin to start meeting with their teams and to come up with solutions to potentially getting more kids on site, or at least to understand what we would have to do another major pivot. And it would be another major pivot. And I'd just like to go through a few things. So I would, and I know you've all heard this before, but there'll probably be, quite a few people watching this during the week. So I will go through it. It was close to a year ago when June and July, we were trying to plan 5 days a week. And we were going back and forth with conversations and ideas. And then about middle of July, they announced CD only. And then October, we got our Lippy going, our limited in person. And then came the Thanksgiving Christmas surge, and we shut down Lippy. And then right after Christmas break, we got Lippy going again. Governor made an announcement to get back in school on the 15th of February. And it was, I wrote down a kind of announcement. There wasn't any mandates behind that. And then at the January board meeting, I announced we were going to move forward without vaccinations and start to plan. And then the next day, the governor announced that the educators got moved up to phase 1A, and the vaccinations went pretty quick. And at that board meeting, I announced we would start planning and shoot for the end of February, 1st of March. And even though we waited for vaccinations, we still came pretty darn close to that timeline of March 8th. We're using 6 feet right now, and the governor announced the 6 feet to 3 feet, and she She made it mandatory for certain timelines. We were ahead of those timelines. I will say, not that it's a contest, but we have our high school kids in already, and much more than other districts in our county. So I would say we've been more aggressive than other districts, and you know, it's been successful, and it's been, you know, there's still some anxiety, and there's still some worried students that come on campus, or staff. You know, it's just kind of that unknown, but it's always, you know, after 2-3 weeks, it gets more comfortable. So we're finding a groove here. So just to talk about where do we go from here, and I'll invite the principals afterwards, board members, if you want to ask some more specific questions. But so as we went through this, first of all, the admin and the principals with their school teams trying to figure out some solutions here. So where do we go from here? The elementary school and the middle school, I would say stay the course. Now, that doesn't mean increasing, and I made a, instead of LIPI, I call it IPI. So increased in-person instruction for students who are struggling. But we still need staff to do that. Another major change would require us to switching teachers again, potentially at the elementary school and middle school. The high school, we're in a little different situation because we set ourselves up to do a lot of simulcasts, and we have, I would say, more staff per students because, you know, we have 360 total in the high school and 60 are in CDL, and a lot of quite a few seniors have, wouldn't say graduated early, but they have very few classes this second semester. We have, and I explained this in an email earlier, we have 9 teachers dedicated at the elementary school and middle school to online, which is required for us to offer CDL. And that's where the challenge becomes, as we have to offer CDL and in person at the same time, it becomes a huge challenge staffing wise. And that's one of the bigger issues as far as the elementary school and the middle school. So when we go down from 6 feet to 3 feet, one thing that we are discovering is your contacts will increase, and we may go to 3 feet, but the exposure does rise within the classroom. So we have a much greater potential for cohorts, quarantining, things like that. And, you know, I say this with about 2.5 months left of school, about 2 months. I do want to put a positive spin on this, that we have the potential to get more kids here this spring, but this is a good sign going into the fall. Going to 3 feet in the fall and possibly this year at the high school and other situations, and we'll have the summer to plan. One of the biggest challenges, like I said, is that we offer CDL and in-person at the same time. I'm not sure exactly what the CDL requirements will be for us in the fall, but we'll have the summer to plan. Like I said, we're doing simulcasts in the high school, and they've kind of been our pilot program. So there is some potential there to do simulcasts in the fall, not only at the high school, but other schools as well. So, you know, you still have quite a few issues here. I don't mean to like go down the list here, but if we bring middle school back, we could potentially have 30 plus in the classroom based on our current staffing, which makes our classrooms pretty crowded at this point. So there's just a lot of information I could go through. I have much more than this, but I would just say, you know, as people watch this or parents who are on this tonight, I get it as a parent, and I'm frustrated. My kids, you know, are not going to school 5 days a week. I want them 5 days a week, but I also understand the challenges of a school district as we offer both CDL and in person. And it becomes a staffing issue of trying to find 9 more teachers for 2 months, for example. So, you know, so my recommendation at this point is to allow our school teams to continue to find solutions, problem solve. Like I said, talked about IPI, so increased in-person instruction for our students that are struggling. So there are possibilities out there. But to do another major shift where we just say 5 days a week, everybody, is another huge pivot. So I would just ask the board members this time, if you have any questions. I'd also invite the principals, as they've been working with their school teams and trying to find solutions to this. You know, when I first heard they went 6 feet to 3 feet, I was very excited. I'm like, oh, this is great. Here we go. And then once you start logistically trying to plan and staff and so on, it became another, I would say, monumental task. So.
I really like what you said about letting the building principals noodle through it and come forward as they see appropriate with what they come up with. Because I don't think there is one solution, and they have, just like you, they have the same interests that all of us do about getting our kids in. So all of our interests are the same. So they'll be interested in doing what they can. And that seems to me like where the best combination of solutions will emanate from.
I guess I've got a few questions. Number one is, you know, if you bring back some students and not others, I think you raise the issues of equity, and I don't know how you're, you know, planning on dealing with that. I understand the practical aspects, getting kids in who are struggling in as much as possible. Hi, Marjorie. So I don't know if you considered that at all. And is it 9 teachers for CDL between the elementary school and the high school or middle school? So it's 9 total. And I mean, from the high school standpoint, I know that you were, planning on doing some simulcast stuff so that you could keep the education rolling, right? So from day to day, you're always progressing. That doesn't seem to be happening at the middle school and the elementary currently. I mean, you're teaching the same thing every other day, or Monday to Tuesday is the same thing. Is that okay? So I guess if you could work out something where you could go 5 days a week with how many ever students that works out to be, I guess you could keep progressing on a day-to-day. I see the advantage of that, getting more material in. But yeah, so is the high school planning on moving forward with 5 days a week?
So
Whoa.
sorry, when we're in the same room, we have some issues here. We're good. Work through our technical stuff here. So at the high school, as soon as that announcement came out, and we have some advantages over the other schools where we had, I think I've shared with the board before, something like 24 students have already met the requirements for graduation. We have some students who don't need to take full schedules their senior year, things like that. So some of our class sizes are definitely smaller than the elementary and middle school at this time.
Mm-hmm.
And so theoretically, when we look at the numbers, we could definitely have every kid here every day that chose to. There would be a handful of courses that are pretty tight, are really large enrolled class. We have a few AP classes, some of our shop classes, art classes. PE classes, but those are also in some of the biggest spaces in our school. So there are some logistics to work through, but not many hurdles to overcome. I think as after that first week, we just get back to in person. We had a positive case, and going through that contact tracing and working through that, and then looking at if we had made the decision and started with every kid right back after spring break, how many more that would have impacted. So it just made us pause for a second, like wanted to see how that second week went, and just really hoping there wasn't another case, kind of that trend changed. And so I think the next step, Dan, you made the point of, if we don't bring all kids back, I want to survey parents and kids. I don't know how many of our high school students are responsible for caring for younger siblings. I think that's a factor, and I don't know how many that is. So if those high school students are here at the high school every day, but their younger siblings are not, how that impacts families. So different things we're considering. So I think the next step is surveying our students and parents and finding out where they're at. I know from my conversations with some parents, they were a little bit nervous and reluctant sending their kids back to in-person at all. And so for safety reasons and just not quite sure. And we've heard a lot of good feedback from parents after talking to their students and hearing about the protocols and feeling like things are much safer. That's pretty anecdotal. I don't have good data on that, but just talking to the parents I've talked to, that we feel pretty good about where we're at. And the other thing we're considering about not jumping too soon to making that big change is, it's been really nice for students to have that small group instruction and be where teachers can focus on that handful of kids that are in person and really try to get them caught up at the end of third quarter and help them with things they've missed. What we're seeing is when kids are home on those asynchronous days or even during CDL, there were a lot of kids that just weren't doing much. Very bright, but the motivation wasn't there. And we definitely saw a big change as soon as they got back to in person. So I do think it would be better. I think grades would continue to increase. We'd have more kids on track to graduate. We'd have freshmen on track, all those things. I think the more we can have kids in person would definitely help academically. But I also didn't want to rush in and just do that right away because of those factors. So I think next step is surveying parents and kids and seeing where they're at. If we made that change, how would that impact their family settings and their responsibilities? And how many kids would opt for 5 days in person a week at the high school?
I appreciate moving into it cautiously.
I guess part of this thinking, sorry. So part of the thinking, my part was, I know we were talking about transportation, and I could see in high school where you probably have more kids driving, so that's not a factor. But I don't know, freshman or sophomore, if they're riding the bus, how they're getting to school, and what that does to our totals on the buses. And I guess I would assume that that's part of the stuff that your guys are working through. I guess, Jeff, in general, how fast do you think that you could go through a change if we were going to go to 5 feet or 5 days a week in the high school for implementing that? I'm just thinking about the overall timeline, and if that's a 2-week or a 3-week implementation, is it worth it for how much time is left in the school year? I
can speak to that a little bit. So this last quarter is a 10-week quarter,
Okay.
so looking at that, even if that was after this week and it took a couple weeks to plan that, I think we would still have students for 6 to 7 weeks in person, 5 days a week. And I think that would be huge.
Yep,
Even if it was
would
the last
agree.
4 weeks of the school year. Like I said, as far as kids earning credits and things like that, talking to some of my colleagues at other schools that have had kids in person, they're seeing that trend that grades continue to increase and kids are doing much better versus the CDL or the asynchronous stuff. So whenever that is, whatever that is, it would be as long as we can do that safely. And I do worry about going down to 3 feet and the possibility, if we do have a COVID case, of that could shut down a quarter or half the school for 14 days. 10 to 14 days and how that might impact if we have a few of those. So trying to balance that if how much would that happen? And so, but whatever we could do, I think that would be, that there's still plenty of time in the school year that it would be a benefit.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, we need the kids back in school. There's no doubt about that. I was just thinking about the logistics of how we get this done. But also I know seniors graduate early, so that all of a sudden, cuts out 100 kids out of the school. So that would probably help some too.
And I think just to go back to Jacob's point, and I will say one of the things that was stressed at the elementary school and the middle school, high school kids obviously a little different, probably better able to handle maybe increasing the class in size, but the quality of education that you're getting for that, whether it's 2 days a week or 3 days a week at an elementary level, we have very small class sizes. So it's a lot of individual instruction. And, if we double those classrooms in sizes, can you imagine? We're going to imagine it in the fall, but we'll have a little more time to prepare. But can you imagine, 24 kindergartners in a classroom, or 20, or, 26, first graders or second graders, and you're trying to, because it's 3 feet in the classroom, but after that they go to the cafeteria, then it's 6 feet again, and out in the hallway or restrooms, it's 6 feet still. So when you say 3 feet, it's in the classroom, but it would be quite the spectacle, and we'd have to buy probably 150 desks to set up in the cafeteria / gym to have a lunch, so there's a lot of logisticals with that. But that's the other piece of that is, do you want 30 plus 8th graders in a class, or do you want 14, 15 in more individual instruction? So that was some things that the team brought up at the elementary school and the middle school as well.
Any other questions or comments?
I think it's difficult, to kind of plan for the fall. I think, if you started the high school full-time this spring, at least you would have an idea of what you can and can't do. I think, to Jacob's point, I think we're always worried about an infection, but it's kind of inevitable that people are going to get infected, whether, they're high school students or not. I don't know that the transmission rate increases that much if everybody's wearing masks, especially with low class numbers in the high school. I guess I got a question for the principals in general. Now that you've been, had a few weeks to kind of assess the students, are you finding that they're more or less on track than what you thought, or especially the middle school and the elementary school?
I'll speak for the elementary, but actually this is just our 3rd week of in person. So teachers are still getting to know their students because they only see them every other day. So there's not a lot of assessment going on right now. Mostly it's relationship building and community building and a lot of social emotional instruction. And the teachers are just having a really great time with their students. And like Jeff said, are able to provide more individual attention, and the behaviors have gone, behavior issues in the classroom have gone way, way down, like pretty awesome. But assessments will come, but we're not quite there yet. But kids are happy. Kids are happy. And it's just been really awesome to see them interacting with each other on the playground and, at lunch, having some time to talk with each other, which is really important. But like I said, the assessments will be happening soon.
I would second what Marjorie said too. I think getting back and getting going has taken us a little bit of work to be able to do that. And we were surprised, I think, as an admin team, we've talked about this, that there's been a lot of just kind of social emotional things that have come up, that students have needed support. They're tired. They are, on one hand, they're really glad to be back and they're excited. And we see that. And then on the other hand, we also see that it's taken a toll on them in a lot of different ways. And so trying to support that while keeping, this priority that we have a lot to do between now and the end of the school year. And so I think as a staff, we know that, like, we feel that pressure and we know that we have a lot to do between now and the end of the school year, but we really want to support the kids in coming back and making sure they're well. And the small classes, we've been thinking about this. And one of the things that really struck me was how when they come in the morning, there's so many staff members around that every student is getting a good morning and their name said, and then they go in the classroom and another good morning and it's directly to them. And so while I agree that in-person education, you can't replace that, one thing that we have been able to do and see a lot of success with is just making sure that each individual student feels seen and feels cared for and feels supported. And I think that that's been a really big thing as we've entered back into the in-person school.
And at the high school, I would say that as far as assessing or seeing where they're at, Dan, we really, in all the classes, core content and electives, we haven't covered what we would normally cover in a year. And the way that we set up our schedule this year with quarters, there's certain students that had, an English class, for example, all CDL. And now we're going to have another group of students who had half of their English in CDL and then maybe half in person. And so it's even looking different for different groups of kids in the same grade, depending on which time of year you took a different class. So we're kind of all over the board on that. And, but we focused on, I think, the same thing that the other principals are talking about, even though they're high schoolers, they're the big kids. They needed some time to be reminded how to be human again. It was funny walking into some classes and just say, "Hey guys, how you doing?" And it was crickets. Everybody just kind of looked up. They couldn't turn their camera off, right? They couldn't mute themselves real quick. So reminding them, when somebody greets you, it's okay to respond back, even a smile, a wave, hello, and just, welcoming them back, even though high school kids are older. There's definitely a transition period there as well. And it's been great to see them starting to warm up with each other. I know they're 6 feet apart and things like that, but just communicating with some of their friends that they haven't seen. And some of the kids on sports teams and things like that have been seeing each other and practicing. But for some of these guys, it's been a long time since they've been around that many people. And for some kids, that takes a while to adjust to. So balancing that with academics, I think is important. And, but we'll get there. We're talking about credit recovery stuff and, possibly other opportunities to try to offer to these students to try to keep their learning going and just doing as much as we can with the time we have this school year.
Nice. I guess I have one more question for all of you. I mean, you guys spent a lot of time kind of preparing safety policies, all that kind of stuff, and practices. And once the students came back, did you find that you had everything you needed, or were you shifting some things? I mean, it's definitely different once you start filling up classrooms and hallways and things like that. But I guess the question that I have is, do you have everything you need? And is the staff really kind of receptive to and feeling comfortable now at this point?
I think that I know with my staff, we're at all different places as far as comfort level. I think we have some people who are like totally feel fine. And then I think there are some who are still pretty concerned or worried about it. But I think overall, I think we've had everything that we've needed to come back. I think we had, some time to plan and prepare. And luckily, I think we weren't in denial early on about it. We were like, okay, this is going to happen at some point. So I think we tried to do a good job of preparing our staffs for what was coming, and we're able to put things into play. I think the most difficult thing, honestly, if I were to look back these last couple of weeks, the most difficult thing has been just the logistics of students who go to the isolation room, and then what happens from there, depending on what symptoms they have and how many days they'll be out. And so I've been so thankful that we've had a school nurse to kind of be able to guide us through that, because it seems like every scenario is different. And so we're trying to work through that. So I've spent a lot of time in the isolation room with students in the last couple of weeks, but I feel prepared for that. I feel like we've really worked hard to make sure that we had all the supplies and all the things in place. And so I think we're working through it. We're learning every single day. And that's like, it's a big learning curve, but yeah, I think it's been good.
And for the elementary, yeah, I say all of our planning paid off. I felt like we were really well prepared, and our screenings and just our re-entry kind of went off without a hitch, really. So I'm just thankful for my team and my admin team and my staff and all the work they put in. It really did pay off, and I would 100% agree with Darla that the hardest part has been determining what the best decisions to make are in the isolation room. And, we do have kids every day that express not feeling well. And so right away to the symptom space they go. And so trying to determine how to maneuver through all of that is a little tricky. And I'm very thankful for our district nurse. But other than that, things are going really well. I'm really proud of everybody.
And I think at the high school, the front office staff did a great job getting everything set, ordering everything we needed. We're learning about the simulcast. That's something new. I've never had to teach in that format, and some of our newer teachers maybe did during student teaching some of the new technology, but that takes a different kind of attention to monitor a chat while teaching kids live, and devices and cameras. We got some of those new OWL cameras we're trying to figure out, and some of our early adopters jumping on that have just loved it. And for those that are maybe a little bit more uncomfortable with technology, trying to figure all that out, and streaming something to an Apple TV while showing a presentation and writing on the board and making sure kids at home and kids in class can all see that and hear that, it's definitely challenging. And so I take my hat off to those teachers as they're figuring it out quickly, as fast as they can, and trying to get feedback from students. But I'm not going to say names, but we had a teacher the other day that mentioned, I taught this whole lesson. It was great. And I get back and I check the chat, and it's just, hey, can you see it? No, I can't see it. Hey, someone should tell her, but nobody ever said anything. So, she taught this great. And so we learned from that, and, in the end, it's fine, but we'll send the video to you. You can watch it later, but, we're learning as we go, and there's those growing pains, but I've just been really proud of the staff. They've been willing to try to figure this stuff out for kids and make it the best they can. Appreciate what everybody said about our school nurse and trying to navigate that with her. It's been great. I think the one thing we need is about 3 more athletic directors to manage all these home events. The kids have been awesome about all these protocols and things like that. When you have hundreds of people coming from all these different towns and schools and different places, and trying to, at the other school, you got to do a QR code. At this one, we have a list. At the other school, we don't have a list, just show up. So it's just the athletics world. And I take my hat off to Ben as well on all the setup and planning and organization for all that stuff, and being able to put on. It's been great to see the kids out there competing and being able to do that safely. I'm so glad that those, what I'd say typical fall sports, were able to get a season in, but that is a lot to manage, and that's been maybe the most taxing as far as organizing all that and logistics. School stuff's been a little easy compared to that, actually.
Did the state provide the Binax machine, Jeff? And have you been able to use it?
I didn't hear you, Dan.
Did the state provide the Binax machine? Did you actually get it for detecting COVID?
So what we're using is, it's not a Binax machine. They come in little cardboard individual tests. So we have some drops and some, they're not, are they Binax? Is that what? Not a machine.
Yeah, I thought they were providing,
Cardboard,
but it could be something else.
cardboard
So
wrap.
you have a test though, a rapid test.
Yep.
Okay.
And so we all did a training. I think all the admin did a training, so we'd be able to do that in the isolation room. We've had to use those a few times, and it's, pretty straightforward.
Good.
We have plenty of them.
Awesome.
Thanks, everyone. Board members, good?
I just want to, well, maybe it's redundant, but I just think that our school principals and their teams, Marjorie and Jacob and Darla, have done a really good, methodical, thoughtful process. I'm really pleased with it. And I know there's going to be a lot of pressure. There always is from parents wanting one thing or another, but I completely defer to you and to Jeff through you guys, or through Jeff to you guys, because I think you've done a great job so far. And I just trust you to make the right decisions going forward. And I think what you learn in the next 2 months will probably set us up for fall. And I look forward to that.
Thanks, Will. Definitely agree with that. Going to move on unless I see any motions from board members. Good. Okay. Action item 6.1, approval of superintendent contract 1-year extension. Before I ask for a motion on that one, I just wanted to give you a little bit of background. Jeff is requesting a rolling 3rd year on his contract. And he talked to Ron and I in our pre-board meeting last week, and we both support this. He's currently under contract through the school year 22-23. And so if we extended it for this 3rd rolling year, it would extend it through 23-24. And so the financials are set for next school year. So we would have to sit down with Jeff sometime in the spring, late spring, summer to negotiate financials with him beyond next school year. And so because of that, there's nothing financial tied to this tonight's action item. So it's just to roll in a 3rd year onto the contract like we've done every other year that Jeff has been at Banks. And what it does is one of the things it does, it validates our support for him and gives continued stability and continuity to the district. So what I'm looking for from the board is a motion to add an additional year to Jeff's contract.
I so move.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? It looks like everybody's in agreement. So motion passes. Okay, thank you. 6.2, going to let Jeff tee that one up. Appointment of board members to certified classified negotiations.
All right, so we are negotiating with both the certified and classified group this spring. Our 3-year contract is up. It seems like it was yesterday we just went through this process, but the process we need tonight is to appoint, and it can be looking for 2, but it can be between 1 and 2 board members who would be interested in participating on the negotiations team. We're looking at Wednesday meetings at 3:30. And I know that's might be tough for some. I mean, we can work with the schedule, but our opening meeting is next Wednesday at 3:30. And then we go from there. Just a side note, they are not bringing a UniServe rep in this year, and I'm not bringing in Brian Hungerford. So we are just working on financials, and I'm speaking certified. I need to talk classified this week, but in only two language items. So hopefully it won't be as long a process as it was the last time where we went through the entire contract. So so most of the times those meetings would be, I guess I would say right after school, but if I end up with 2 people on the board, on the team that that doesn't work for them, then we'll have to try and figure something else out. So it is it's a process similar to selecting a chair and a vice chair. So if you want to, I believe some people would be interested just because I met with Nori and Ron, but you just basically nominate someone and we go from there if you would like to do so.
I'd like to be on it.
I know that I can't, and I know Raymond has tentatively said he might be willing. So I don't know if that frames how we nominate, but.
I'd have a tough time making it because of work at that time.
For me, I can do it, but I'm also very busy at work. So I would probably look to try to push the time frame to 4:30.
Okay, so it
And if-
looks like Raymond and Will can do it. And so we could look to nominate them also. That would work.
And
I don't know if I'm supposed to even be chatting this much before. Is that okay, Jeff?
someone needs to nominate someone. So just so you know, it's going to be in person. If people are comfortable with that, it will not be over Zoom. We're going to do it in the boardroom and 6 feet.
So I'll entertain motion for nominating board members to serve on the negotiations team.
I nominate Will.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so Will, is there another nomination?
I'll nominate Raymond.
Second?
Second.
Let Dan second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, I hopefully we redeemed ourselves in that process, Jeff. We have Will and Raymond officially now.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, everybody. Okay, board communication, Jeff's report, Jeff's 7.1.
Just to mention a few things in my report. I told you I'm proposing that we have a work session on the 19th, if that would work for people. What I would like to do on the 19th is two things. The first thing is, now that we have 2 board members who are on the negotiations team, I'd like to have an executive session at 5:15 to probably 5:50. And this would be by Zoom to discuss negotiations. One of the things you have expressed in the past is that try to communicate better during negotiations, and I can start us out by meeting an executive session to discuss the negotiations and with you to get you up to speed with the process and our focus and so on. And then at 6 o'clock, I would like to have a work session with the board and Joni to present an overall budget, money, where we're at to lead us into budget season. We're still at least a month out from our first budget meeting, but just to bring you up to speed on that, because I think that's part of the negotiations part as well. So we can have an executive session about the process and then a work session so you can ask Joni a lot of questions about our current budget and where we're at and so on and so on. And also to talk about ESSER funding and GEAR funding and all this funding that we've received this year and where we're at with all of that. So that's one thing I wanted to mention. If you're up for that, I mean, it was in my board report and I haven't heard otherwise. I am in a meeting tomorrow from 2 to 4. We didn't really mention it today, but you probably have heard there's summer school funding potential out there. They are scrambling to get a process in place and how to get the funding and so on and so on. So we've already started to work with people who would be interested in providing a summer school and what's the summer school going to look like. And 9 through 12 is an academic focus. K through 8 would be a more social emotional focus and all of that. So OD is about ready to release that process. So I will be getting more information on that with a meeting tomorrow and as they release that. So there is still that potential for additional time in the summer that will be funded. You saw in the consent agenda, we are beginning hiring and quite a few support staff certified throughout the district. That is our SIA funding. We went with the similar plan that we did before. You'll notice that we're adding additional counselors for next year. We're adding additional teachers throughout the district, and that was part of our SIA plan that was put on hold last last March when all of that happened. So we're beginning in that process with counselors and TOSA, middle school teachers, looking at going, working on the schedule at the middle school and so on. So, and then the other part I wanted to add, and I didn't put it in my report, I would like to do our May meeting in person. If people are comfortable with that. I don't know if you've had the opportunity to be vaccinated or not, or if that is not concerning to you, but I would like to do our May board meeting in person. In the boardroom, it would be just us and some school staff, but we would broadcast the meeting using one of the owls from the high school. And Mr. Pence has assured me he'll be the master by then. So, so I propose that to you for the May meeting and trying to get to some back to normal. You know, we have our kids here now, so, but we still have to limit how many people attend and maintain space, but we would broadcast that meeting so people could still attend if they wanted to virtually. So I think that's it.
Questions, anybody?
Jeff, do you know, maybe you already said this, but what Wednesday the negotiating team meetings will commence?
Probably 3:30 to 5:30, Will?
No, when will you start having the meetings? Next week?
Oh, yes, it is next week.
Okay.
Yeah, that's our first one, and we're going to start with a presentation from Joni to talk money with the teams so they understand where we're at.
And you're going to schedule those meetings weekly?
Yes, that is the plan.
Do they have to be Wednesdays?
Doesn't have to be.
Could it be Tuesdays?
I can check with them.
Or Thursdays? Just not Wednesday. Or Monday.
Or Monday, or Saturday, or Friday, or,
I can do Tuesday as well.
so we went with Wednesday because that's the day we've always met this entire year. So, I mean, like I said, we can figure out the schedule. If it doesn't work for team members, then we're going to have to figure it out. So I'll get back to you, Will and Raymond, on that.
Okay, thank you.
Are you talking about the first meeting next Wednesday, moving that to Tuesday right away, or can you do next Wednesday and then we go from there and we can all plan together?
I can't do Monday or Wednesdays for the next month and a half.
Right.
And if that's a problem, that's all right. I'm sure Will and Jeff will take care of it. I just can't do Monday and Wednesdays for the next month and a half.
Okay, I'll talk to the union leadership. Tuesdays are fine with me, but
They'd probably prefer I wasn't there anyway.
that's not true.
Are you good, Jeff?
Yeah, that's what I had to say.
Okay, board members, Will?
I like the short and sweet meeting. I like the progress everybody's made with returning to school. I'm very impressed and pleased with it. And I think you're handling it excellent from the top to the bottom. And I just look forward to your continued good decision making and process. I have complete confidence.
Thank you. Raymond?
I think everybody's doing a good job. Thank you.
Ron?
Yeah, Ben, I saw your board report and I can only imagine everything that you're trying to go through and scheduling. I was happy to see that the seniors for the football team did get a chance to play at home, and hopefully the field held up. But that was nice to see, and I'm sure that they enjoyed that. And I guess just to all the administrators, and hang in there, the year's almost over. All the turns that this virus has taken, you guys are doing a good job, and it's hard to not get frustrated with all the new rules that you have to go through. But I do think, when I saw that there was a possibility that the seniors, and again, I have a daughter that's a senior that could end their spring term by going back to school every day, to actually see all their friends, and to enjoy that last half of the year. I was encouraged by that. So hopefully high school, that does work. So anyway, that's it.
Dan?
I just want to say that I really appreciated the updates tonight. I thought we had really nice discussion, and I thank you for that. I mean, it goes to show that you guys have really put a lot of time, gone over the top to get our kids back, to really be one of the first ones back, definitely in our area. So kudos to that. And, as Ron said, hang in there. We don't have that much time left, but, I think, the things that we're doing now are going to carry forward to the fall. So we'll just have to figure it out at that point. Thanks.
Yeah, I just agree with my colleagues on the board, and just really grateful for all your efforts, and so glad to be April 21 instead of April 2020. So come a long ways. So thank you, everyone, and the meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
You too.